an introduction to myself first. I'll do an introduction to my past photography before the current collection has been launched, which is called Out of the Grey. And then a little bit of a chat about wildlife photography. And if anyone has any questions at that time, I'm very happy to answer them. And then a brief thing on what's next. So just quickly, an introduction about myself. I've been taking photos on and off for about 20 years, and I absolutely love it. I mean, I've got all these technical speeches, it's passionate, but I love it. I really adore doing it. I love traveling, and they just go hand in hand really well. And I always wanted to kind of initially just share these images back with my friends, and it's sort of gone on from there, from the beginning days. Wildlife photography is certainly really where my heart lies. I do other photography as well. I've done a little bit of commercial and studio photography. I've done an album cover actually, which is quite fun. And I think you can see it on the website, but it's not for today for sure. And as I said, underwater was really where it started. So what I've tried to do to sort of give you an idea of where I started and to move this presentation along rather swiftly to get to the main presentation is I've created a couple of running slideshows. One for the underwater section, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about underwater photography very, very briefly, and then also about sort of land-based, and then moving on to the collection. So if that's good, we will move on to the very first slideshow, which was my underwater photography, which is where all of it started for me. So just a moment while I press all the right buttons.
Martin, we're not seeing your screen.
Is that not sharing?
We're seeing. Oh, is it because I switched?
I was seeing it.
I was seeing
Are you seeing it? Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
My bad.
I can see it.
Very good.
Okay,
Sorry.
we will start again. Hi, Dave, by the way, from Canada. So that was a very quick look. So just a second, my slide isn't moving on. A very quick look at about 15 years worth of photography where I started. So right in the early days, I started taking photos with digital cameras. Actually, for me, that really transformed my world because I didn't have to change the film effectively. I could take many photos I wanted, and I didn't have to surface to change the film. So that sort of really opened up the ocean for me, sort of photographically. As I mentioned, I really wanted to share these photos were really for me to share with my family and my friends when I've been to these places. And it all started when I learned to dive. It was just amazing. I've seen all these colors and animals that I'd never seen before, and it just drove me to go back again and again and again, and to capture more and more. And I still love it. I haven't been for a while, and it's always on my to-do list. But it's certainly where everything started for me. I've sort of dived in many places, so Red Sea, the Caribbean, Galapagos, Philippines, Maldives, Indonesia, and it really started my my passion for wildlife as well with this. It wasn't just about the photography. I'm quite geeky at times. I love the diving. I did a lot of tech diving, and I love the photography, but it really started getting me engaged with wildlife when I was there, and it slowly started progressing and changing into a search for wildlife rather than just the search for going the diving, the search for the other places. And that really was the cornerstone of where I started. And then that kind of moved me on to sort of on land sort of photography. But what I mean by on land is I wasn't actually in the water. There are some pictures, in fact, there's a picture for dolphin in the next one, my on land little selection coming up in a moment. I was above water. I realized that when I was just reviewing it earlier today. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run the other sequence so you can get an idea of those photos then. And then after that, if there's any questions in the chat on that section, after I've had a quick chat, we can take any questions. So I'll just move on to the next slideshow, which did not start, just bear with me. So there's a selection of my transition, if you want. It wasn't really a transition, of as I moved on and progressed. It all really came to light with me in 2011 till 2012 when I went with my then girlfriend, my now wife, Emma, on a round the world trip. And I kind of thought we'd just be going from town to town and having a good time at a party all the way along the way. But it very rapidly became a search for wildlife, and that was the first time I'd been to Antarctica then as well. It was fascinating. It all changed. I'd say the turning point for me was in Borneo. We were on the Kinabatangan River. It's the first time I'd seen a wild orangutan. It's the first time I'd seen pygmy elephants. It's the first time I'd been charged out by pygmy elephants as well, actually, thinking about it. And it started making me think about the conservation issues that affect Borneo so much as well. And this presentation is not about that, but it certainly drove me on further to capture more wildlife and to see more things. Then it kind of progressed in 2013 when, after having actually proposed in Antarctica while we were traveling, we got married, and we did around the world, not around the world, sorry, we drove from Namibia to Zambia, and in a Land Rover. And that little picture in the top right, I'm kind of pointing at it there, is our Land Rover. On the top of that was a roof tent, and that was our honeymoon suite for most of it. It was phenomenal. It was fantastic. We had a truck, a tent, a truckload of camera kit, and some gin, and it was fantastic. It really was. It was sensational. I've been lucky enough to be able to, opportunity to travel. And I've got photography from Svalbard, which is north of Norway. Haven't quite made it right up to the Arctic, and all the way down to Antarctica, as I mentioned, with lots of concentration in Africa for a period, which I've really, really enjoyed. So that's my past, and hopefully I've given you a taste of some of the drivers and how I got to where I am at the moment. And I'm quite happy at this point to take any questions on that. If there are, or I'm quite happy. I can't see the chat window though, Rosie, so I don't know if there's any questions. Or I'm quite happy to move on.
There's been one good question, if I might interject, from Damien, just asking, how close or far away are you on some of the shots, and also how do you choose which pictures to use? Technically perfect or loved?
Um,
A good one.
so how close I'm, some, depending on what the animal is, I am sensible. I don't want to be eaten by a polar bear. And they are apex predators. But some animals you can be remarkably close to. The turtles, you haven't seen the turtle picture yet. The turtle picture that you'll see in a bit, and like the chameleon picture, I was like, you know, inches away from. But you've got to be careful. It's not always right to do that. You need to make sure that they are not threatened, that they've got space to escape, and so on and so forth. So you can get remarkably close. So the picture we're looking at there, the leopard, the black and white picture in the middle there, that was probably only about 3 meters away from us outside the truck we were in. And it was an open top truck. So they literally chopped the back of the truck off and put some benches on it. And you just sit there at nighttime, and they're not interested in you, luckily, mostly. And I say quite close. And how do I pick them? It's tricky. The first thing, it just has to appeal to me. It's very difficult to explain. I need to feel an emotional attachment to the image. Now, that could be because of while I was there, or what I really want is that the image is, you know, technically correct to me as well. And then I go through a rigorous review process, which I get all sorts of people into. Emma, my wife, Gabriel, my family, everybody gets to have a look at the pictures. I'll shout out to Dave Stanford, who's there as well. He was on the boat in Antarctica with me when I was choosing the out of the grey pictures, and he helped me choose Legend, which we'll get onto in a minute. So it's kind of shared experience. Yeah, and it takes a while, but it's a lot of fun mostly. Although I'm sure my family are getting a bit bored of it. So, any other questions on there?
Yes, we have a couple. Sorry, Rosie, you do it.
I just figured, yeah, if you want, we can come back to them, because I think...
Oh, okay, because I'll move into the next section, which is we can do 2 more questions now, and then we'll move on.
There's one that says, do you know in advance if a photo is going to be presented in black and white from Simon?
I much more so now, because originally not so much, but now I'm taking pretty much everything in black and white. And I even actually had to stop myself taking all of my family photos in black and white recently, because it was all just, that's what I'm going for. So the last 2 or 3 years, I've really focused on black and white. So I'm actually looking to take images that will work well in black and white. So, you know, the leopard, for instance, that wasn't a chosen shot, it was a night shot, but that kind of thing would work well. And I know it works well. There's a nice sort of contrast, the shadows in there and all of that. So now I am, and my mind is quite focused on that. And in fact, I find it difficult to see in color with wildlife at the moment. So that's that one, I think.
No, another question, Martin. How many different cameras do you travel with, and how many lenses from Ramona?
As many as I can carry is the short of it, at least. So for a big trip, say Antarctica, I would take 2, 3 camera bodies, 5, 6 lenses, a GoPro, backup batteries, memory cards, laptops, the whole works. But the challenge is you don't know what you're going to find. You may have the shots in your mind before you go there. And also, if you break something or lose something when you're on these expeditions, you can't replace them. So it's always good to have like a wide angle and a long lens. But if something breaks, you can't replace it in some of these places. So it's making sure you've got all the kit to do it. That said, when we traveled around the world, I traveled with a single camera with 2 lenses, ultra wide 10-22, and a long lens of 70-300, because that's all I could carry for the entire year. But now I tend to go a bit more prepared. I'm taking it sort of more professionally, so I want to make sure I'm getting the shots I'm looking for. So it's more planned now. So it's quite. That's why the Land Rover was handy.
There's one more question, if you've got time to take it. Do you have it, Rosie, or do you want me to say it? It's what workflow do you use for converting fixed to black and white? From Sharon.
Okay, well, so if people want to have a more technical conversation with me, I'm more than happy. Please send me an email and I'm happy to go through the details. But just on the very outset, I'm effectively using Lightroom for culling, initial brief edits, and then Photoshop. And that's pretty much it. But there is more to that, but that's a good 2-hour conversation in itself. And as I said, please send me an email. My phone's there, whatever. Just reach out and I'll be very happy to run through it anytime. So.
You've got some really lovely comments as well. So from Cliff, fantastic, love the zebras. And there's one from your wife who says, I've seen these photos 1,000 times, but this elicits an internal wow, especially the Arctic tern and the leopard, spectacular.
Yeah, that was nice. Gabriel was there. He was actually, he was in Emma's tummy still at the time when we were at Svalbard. He hasn't been born. Right, let me move on to the presentation now that was going to be at the hospital. It's called Out of the Grey, and it's in short, I work in the city a lot as well, and to fund my travels, and I've sort of, it's my awakening from, you know, from myself, from sort of not seeing wildlife to seeing it, and my escape from working in the city to fund my stuff and getting out. And all of these have been captured over the last 10 years. And again, I've got, so just a very brief slide of this in another environment before I get on to the main thing, just to give you an idea, because obviously there's a challenge with the digital media. Some of you are on phones, some of you are going to be on nice big screens, and, you know, just for you to get a feel of where my initial exhibition was. I've got an extra slide here for you to see. It's a very, very brief slide. We're not going to dwell on it too much before we go on to the images. There's my little boy in the top left corner as well. So he's seen these images too. And what I'll do now is I've got another slideshow, and there's 15 images to run through on this one. It runs a little slower to give you a little bit more time to have a look. After that, I've chosen if I can have a top 5, and I find it difficult, I've chosen my top 5 to go through in a bit more detail, but I'd be happy to answer questions on other ones as well. So without further ado, I think it's meant to say, and press all the right buttons. And there we go. That's the full collection. I hope you enjoyed that, the collection itself. If if you'd like to put in the chat a favorite, that would really help me, actually. It's nice to have some feedback on the ones that people actually enjoy seeing. I know I've got my favorites coming up now, of which the first one's actually already on the screen. This is called Origin. Now, let's get rid of the label. Now, Origin is not about the turtle. This is about me and my start in photography. And this is sort of my, how should we say, this is my representation of the beginning of my photography underwater. Now, this turtle I was very close to. I was about, well, I was using a fisheye lens, for those of you know, so you were 3, 4, 5 inches away from it, really, to be honest. And it was calm, it was happy, it was sitting there. It could get away, it had a way to get out of there and everything else. So yeah, it really is one of my all-time favorites because it takes me back to the diving. It puts me back in the water. It's not just the picture of a turtle with the remora on back. It's the emotion that it brings to me that I enjoy so much about it. It's difficult taking images underwater. I would say more so than on land to a degree. You're moving, your subject's moving. It's almost a dance. The light is all over the place. It's difficult. Black and white works really well underwater, since we were talking about that before, because you lose a lot of the colors straight away. As soon as you're down at 10 meters, you've lost all the red anyway. And even with big strobes, right, you're not going to get that much color. And if there's any sediment floating in the water, you get it just flashing back into you. But this was great. This was a very calm moment. This was taken in the Red Sea, where I started all my diving as well, actually. And I used to go there 5, 6 times a year. Any opportunity to get in the water, sort of in the, what are we now, the sort of early 90s, I would just go, you know. So that's the first image. Should we take photos on each image as we go, or shall I go through the 5? What?
I suppose. Has anyone got a comment that you want to make about this picture in particular? I think generally people seem to be really enjoying the thing. So
Okay.
Yeah, we've had a few favourites. Like, yeah, leopard, definite front runner. Lots of people have just said too many to choose.
Right. Well, hang on. In that case, thank you, Rosie. The next favourite photo is Legend. Now, this is the photo that Dave from Canada, wildlife photographer, Dave Stanford, amazing guy, helped me choose. I had a real difficulty choosing this image. It is the only not fully wild animal, or it's the only captive animal in this set. It was wild briefly. So this is Wahoo, and I've called him Legend. This image is called Legend. And unfortunately for Wahoo, he was born in the wild, but unfortunately, when he was quite young, he was brought into Africa. So, I mean, we're talking like days or weeks old. There was a local farmer who brought him in and said he'd been abandoned. Now, whether he'd been abandoned or whether the farmer didn't want it on his land, we will never know. However, Africa is a charity in Namibia that it still does a lot of good work with cats, but they used to rewild animals. And they started off by putting him in a 500-hectare enclosure, which is massive, huge, to try and rewild him. But he never rewilded. In fact, whenever people used to come up around him, because there's a sort of there's other structures and things like that, he'd come to the fence. He actually liked not direct human contact, I should add, but human interaction. And so then eventually they moved him, after 2 or 3 years of trying to rewild him, into a smaller enclosure of about 50 acres. And his role was an ambassador of his species. And this shot just captures him for me. It's him in his full glory, walking, or, you know, not really walking, he's sort of strutting, strolling, moving towards you, just amazing, his eyes. And it had a massive impact. So this happened on my honeymoon, this photo. And it's the first time I'd seen a big cat. And it, you know, as I mentioned, all the emotion with it, the fact it's my honeymoon, the fact the animal was such a beautiful animal. I like lots of animals, but it was just staggering. And I've had this picture in color for a long time after my honeymoon, but in black and white, it just came alive to me. There's no distraction about any of the background. With, you know, it's just him in his full glory. So this is my tribute, effectively, to Legend. And as I always say this, he is a perfect specimen in every way. So that is. I've got a bit emotional there. Sorry, that's Legend. Any comments on that one? I've got 3 more to run through, and then we can have a
really
free
nice comments. You know, stunning capture, beautiful detail. He is fantastic. Someone's asked, what is your angle on this photo?
I'm at his eye. I'm at his eye level.
Mm.
So I try always to be at the eye level or below. So even with, if I just, can we just do that? Even, I'll just go back. Even with Origin, I want to be below. It's important that you show respect to the animal through the image by being at eye level. If you're shooting down on the animals, there are times to shoot down, but you know, especially with someone like, you know, Wahoo, you need to show him in his full glory. You need to give him the respect he deserves. And these images, you know, I have to, you know, they're like 2 meters across. It's a good size image. If I can make them larger, I would certainly do so. And that'll be part of my work over the coming years. I love to see them. I love to see big images doing the animals justice, because they're the stars of the image of the photo.
Martin, we had a question from Charlie earlier saying, how do you make your photos? And I suppose that's all about the composition and the framing, and but also kind of preparing yourself. I suppose Charlie might want to explain himself or themselves what they wanted to say.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Right, brilliant. When I mean what I mean by make your photo is in, do you have the image in your head before you take the photo? So it's not something that just kind of wanders into a scene and you just take what's in front of you. Do you have that idea beforehand?
It's with wildlife photography, I find it's a mixed bag. I always go with photos I want to take. However, I'm sure you've heard the saying, never work with animals or children. They don't always do what you want. Now, this image, we knew we were going to see Wahoo. I've got pictures of him here, pictures of him in the tree, you know, and there are certain images that I want. There's definitely, I've got maybe a collection of 20 images I'm always trying to get hold of to add to my portfolio. But there is a lot of, and it's one of the things I kind of talk about, sort of, there is a fair amount of luck. It depends what animal's there. I mean, if you're sitting at a water hole, I may have an idea that I want close-up shots or sort of portrait shots. I'll be working on them, or wide-angle shots. But what animal turns up at the time depends on the day. So certainly I've got some shots in my mind I want to take, but I'm quite flexible. I'm quite an opportunist when it comes to taking photos. And I think I have to be, because I don't get to do this full time. As I said, I have to fund it myself, and I fund that by working in London, well, in England, let's say, because it's not always just London. So I have to take any opportunities that come along, really. But I try and, when I'm planning the trip, I'm thinking about that. I'm taking inspiration. I take a lot of inspiration from other photographers as well. That there's, you know, to get ideas, to see what they've done, to see, you know, do I like that kind of thing? How would I want to do things differently? And yeah, as I said, I've definitely got some shots, and there are some I haven't got in, you know, 5, 6, 7 years. And patience is certainly part of wildlife photography, not just sitting in the car or on the ground or wherever else it is waiting for the wildlife, but waiting till you get the shot to put in the collection and making sure it's the right shot. Is that okay?
More than okay. Sorry, brilliant. Thank you.
No, perfect. Right, let me move on.
Martin, just a quick question about how old is Legend?
Well, Legend has now unfortunately passed away. I cannot remember his exact age. I'm not sure if Emma, my wife, can remember. He probably made 14 years. I'll have to look it up. He passed away just before my first exhibition, so just over a year ago. He lived longer than a wild animal would do, because without predation, without competition, they can live quite a while. So so I will look that up, and I will add that to the website narrative for him. So moving on. So the next image, tread carefully upon this earth. Now, this is a Namaqua chameleon. It's taken in Namibia and Dorob National Park, which is down by Swakopmund kind of area down there. A stunning thing. Now, this is also another large image. This is, I'm going to try this. I'm not sure how it's going. I need to give you an idea of the scale, because the image is sort of my largest image. It's just over sort of 2 meters in scale. But and I'm not sure everyone's got my picture up. But if I put my hand up here, I've got a little chameleon, a plastic one, I must add. And this was the size of it. He was an inch and a half across, and it's printed really large. Now, wildlife photography is, I'm not guilty of it, I do this too, is often dominated by large mammals. But this guy's amazing. The detail was just awesome. Back to my previous, I didn't go out to take a photo of this guy. I'd actually gone out with the longest lens I'd owned at the time, which was around about a 600mm lens. It was a 200 to 400, 1.4 extender lens. So I'd gone out looking for birds, basically. And there was this little chameleon in the sand, and it was just there. And I just got on the sand. And as I say, I like to have it at eye level. So I literally pushed the camera, because it's a big camera, it's a big lens, into the sand to try and get down to his level. And I took the photo, and it's possibly my all-time favorite. It's just, these five are very hard to choose through. Yeah, and I'm probably proudest of this because it's one of the more different images. Yeah, that's it. So,
cheeky comment there from Damien saying, tongue in cheek, how do you know it was a guy?
Sorry, say that again.
Cheeky comment, tongue in cheek, how did you know it was a guy, from Damien?
I'm an expert. I had no idea. Yeah, it could well have been a lady chameleon. I don't know how to tell, and I would respect its privacy. Thank you, Damien. Right, so my next image, again, I like this for a number of reasons. This is the cleaned up squad. Now, these are white-backed vultures, as it says there, taken in Chobe National Park, Botswana. Now, again, out looking for birds, but I did not expect to see this. This for me is where everything comes together, the luck, the patience, the effort to get things right. That branch for me is amazing. The detail in the branch, them just sitting on there, three together, they've got a kind of symmetry around the central one, is awesome. And everyone has bad things to say about vultures, but I don't. They are awesome animals. Yeah, they maybe, well, we may consider them to be some of their habits a bit unsightly, but they're, and you know, they're always associated with death because they tend to clean up after everyone else, but they are so critical to the ecosystem, and they're suffering so much. Sorry, we're not going to be getting conservation, but you know, as everything else is getting poisoned or whatever else, these guys are clearing up the mess, and they're getting poisoned through that as well. And for me, this image with them standing on there, this was a beautiful morning photo. This does them some justice, I hope. And again, I like the image large. It's what they need. Yeah, I'm proud of this one too. It's good to see them again here. So, any questions, or I'll move on to the last one in detail, unless anyone else has any other photos they want me to run over as well.
There were quite a few questions, to be honest, Martin, so maybe we can move on to the next one and do all the questions at the end.
Okay, right, absolutely. So the next one is Fearless. Now, I've chosen this one to talk about you because this was my last time taking photographs, which was a year ago. I have not had a chance to do any more. This was in Antarctica, and we had a beautiful, well, I thought it was beautiful, a lovely afternoon. bouncing up and down in a rib. And Dave is still here. Dave was with me, and it was my mum and my dad, and we were there for a couple of hours being bounced around. It was just a phenomenal afternoon, and we had some great times down there, and this was just great. These guys are fearless, right? There's a leopard seal pretty much around the corner, but not in the photo that you can't see there, you know. But regardless, they're just going in one after the other after the other. They're like rockets just launching themselves in. And, you know, you've got the waves smashing against the rocks. It doesn't matter what the weather's like. And I deliberately didn't cut out the guy there on the left of the photo, because there's a dozen of them. So that's why he's still in there as well. And it was just amazing watching these things. And I hope that by sharing the images and sharing the emotion behind it, it just brings people a little bit closer. It's cold. That sea there is, if it's a degree, that'll be warm. The sea gets down to, you know, actually sub-zero, because the salt in the water means it can actually go slightly below zero. So it's really cold, and they're going out basically fishing to come back and feed their young. You know, there they are, just occasionally pausing to check if their nemesis is there, and then bam, in they go. They just don't falter. They're very special animals. And that's it for my 5 images. Really, I've got a couple of other slides on the challenges of wildlife photography, but really most of the stuff I've talked about, it's not a technical conversation, and a little bit on the future. But I've certainly got, if we've at least got 5 minutes to talk about any other questions if people have them.
I think maybe now we could bring in questions directly from the audience. Actually, we have a few on the chat if you want me to read them out, or Rosie.
Please, that would really help, because my screen setup's a bit strange.
Rosie, are you here?
Yes, I am.
We've got a few.
Do you want me to go through a couple of them?
Yes,
yeah.
Please. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this up on the screen so you can see that while we talk about them. But yes.
Yeah, lots of lovely comments again. Like, yeah, lots of people have their different favourites. Ramona asked, firstly, are these on your website?
They are, yes, indeed. And I was going to give out my link at the end. It's www.martinshawn.co.uk. They're all there right on the top page. As soon as you land, the collection's there. They've got all the details as well. There's a narrative behind each of them. So some of the stuff I've been telling you, I'm a bit more emotional when I talk about it. But there's narrative on, you know, where they were taken and the background behind each of the images. Yes, they are. And hello, Ramona. Great to hear from you.
Lovely. Someone said, have you ever had a shot that you most wanted to get but haven't managed to get?
Yes, I think that's going to be with me forever. I mean, the one that comes to my mind all the time is I've wanted to get some jumping gazelles, but going from like a rock to somewhere else. So getting a sequence of them in the air simultaneously. And I've got them on the rock and landing on the rock and not facing the right way and everything else. Yes, absolutely. There are plenty, and there are lots of animals I haven't found to photograph yet, whether I haven't been to the right location or I've been and I haven't seen them. So yes, certainly.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, as you say, like they don't do what you want them to.
No, and they tend to also not necessarily want to see you.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's one of the things that makes it so impressive when you do manage to capture it.
Yeah.
So someone else has asked, do you have a personal favourite experience from the field?
It's got to be Antarctica. I'm not talking about photography. I mean, it lends itself to photography, so it's so majestic. Rough weather in Antarctica is hard to beat. Properly, obscenely bad weather. The last trip I went on was all very calm. The first time I went with Emma, we had waves that were 7-8 meters high. It just gets you in the mood. It becomes an adventure. Yeah.
There's a question from Suzanne, which is, what is the shot that you most wanted to get but haven't managed to yet?
Whales. I want to take good photos of whales. Now, there's a number of reasons I haven't got that shot. I have swum with whales, although I didn't see them, but you could hear them when I was in Bali. I haven't gone at the right time. I haven't planned it, and I need to shed about 20 kilos so I can do some free diving with them, because they don't like bubbles, as far as I understand. So all the photography tends to be done from free diving. So whales, I would love to get some good mother and calf photos of a whales and print them out, sort of 6 meters long. That would be one of the animals I can't actually do life size, because I wouldn't be able to find it anywhere to put the image. But that's one that's burning in my mind.
There is a question about whether, if you're in a tour, if you're part of a group or a tour, does it affect your approach to the wildlife you're shooting?
It certainly does. A number of reasons. Not least is I don't want to upset everyone else on the tour. People go and see these things and they want to experience, they have their own journeys. The journeys I'm telling you are my journeys, are my emotions. And they'll want to go there, whether they're on the honeymoon or whether they're just traveling or whatever else it is. And what they don't really want is a bloke with 14 cameras making a lot of noise and interfering all the time. So we try and always get separate vehicles. We try and, keep out the way, trying to be, try and consider the other people around me. And also, you're less, if there's a lot of people, they're going to make noise as well. So you're less likely to get the shots that you want. So certainly, yes, I'm far more, it's more opportunistic when you're with lots of other people, because you just have to see what happens and how people are reacting around you. And also, I've got some nice photos with people in as well. They don't fit my collections, but there was a beautiful photo of a whale just coming up right in front of one of the zodiacs when everyone was on, and the water's just coming down over them and stuff. So I make sure I also take photos of people as well. So yes, definitely, there is definitely a change.
A couple of questions, technical questions. One from Ken is saying, when are you bringing out an album or calendar to be published?
Sorry, say that again, I can't hear you.
When are you bringing an album or a calendar to be published?
Well, I did toy with one this year, but with everything going on, I didn't get around to it, but it is on my list of things to do. I would love to do a calendar. I would love to do a book, but I don't have enough. What I don't want to do is produce a book before I'm ready. I've got this collection. I'm working on 2 or 3 other collections simultaneously. And I think at that point, once I've got those out, it'll be nice to have like a big coffee top table book brought out. But I certainly have, pondered a calendar last year. In fact, I've got a draft print of it, but it didn't come out to my liking. I just didn't get around to finishing it.
Wilder has a question as well about thinking about your body of work. How many trips or how many hours do you think you've invested in your portfolio?
How many trips? If you include diving, I would say on average for the last 20 years, it's probably 4 trips a year, not more than that. However, I did have the whole year traveling in the middle. So if that's 1 trip, that was like 20 trips all in one. 5-6 trips a year regularly, I think, maybe a little more. And how much did they say? How much time as well?
It was one or the other. I suppose it's about kind of understanding how much
The
hours.
hours are, I would say, almost countless. The trip itself is probably about 10% of the work, 10-20% of the work. To give you an idea, each and every one of these, on average, each one of those prints that I make out of the grate took 4 weeks on average to prepare, because I had to scale them up large and get them exactly how I want. I improved the technique as I went through it, but it takes me roughly 4 weeks per image to get them into a state with all the draft print runs and test strips. And anyway, it takes about 4 weeks for each one. So yeah, I couldn't count the hours. I'm sure my family can tell you more accurately.
We're getting quite close to the closing time. I don't know if anyone's got more time or if how you're feeling about it. There are more questions on the chat.
what I will do is, just while we're chatting, I'm just going to put up my links there. So if anyone wants to keep in touch, that's there. I am most prolific on Facebook, which is a bit odd for a photographer, but I tend to have better conversations. I find I can express myself better on Facebook. I do use Instagram as well, but and there's my website for everyone who was asking, are the pictures there? They're all there. They're all available in fairly decent size. You'll be able to, you know, if you want to go and have a look there, that they're good enough for desktop sizes and stuff like that. Because you know, the images I'm actually interested in displaying and selling are the very large images. So I'm quite happy for people to have, you know, access to the other images if they want them. They can have a look at the website there.
Quick comments that we've left in the chat. If you scroll up, I've left the survey information. If you wanted to share a comment about today, to keep us, you know, to share how today went for you, then you'll be welcome to sort of follow that survey and let us know how that today went. And I can send you more information by email, certainly a follow-up. And for those who arrived late, who didn't get the chance to get the link in time, then we'll share the recording. What I'll do is I'll send an email to everybody with a link to the recording so that you can watch it again or watch it in full. There were a couple more questions as well, which is, where are you going next? And do you change the luminance of your photographs?
Sorry, where am I going next?
Yep.
Well, I'll be honest, at the moment, it's not planned. I know where I want to go, but at the minute, with everything that's going on in the planet around us, I've changed where I wanted to go. I'm actually trying to do some UK stuff, is what I'm thinking about doing next. I want to, if you remember, there was a Dartmoor pony in the on land slideshow, which, by the way, I'll put the slideshows on the website as well, so you can have a look at them in your own time too. But I'd love to do something in the UK, but I can't think quite what I want yet. But I'd like to do something in the UK, something that would be fitting to join the collection. And the second part of that, sorry, I didn't hear that.
It was something about luminance. Wait a second. Do you change the luminance of your photographs?
In short, I'm going to say yes. The exposures are changed and altered. I mean, I'm not changing something from day to night. I'm not changing something from night to day. But yes, I will change the brightness. That's why it takes so long to create the photos. I want it. The reason I call it fine art, not photography, is because I want it to represent what I'm seeing or what I'm feeling, and it gives me a little bit of scope. Right? It's not 100% documentary. There's no animals added or taken out of my, you know, images or anything else like that. But yes, I'll emphasize lights, darks, and other things, and put them to how I think they should be. Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll share with you, Martin, the chat, so you have a chance to respond to questions who are in there. There's a one that I find interesting. Obviously, I think you've just answered Reese's question, which is what makes an image stand out to you. But the question that I thought we could finish on is the adventure more important than the shot?
Yes. Yeah.
That's from Wild, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people say, "Oh, don't you, you know, you're taking photos, you're not enjoying yourself." No. I'm absolutely loving every minute of it. And I don't mean loving every minute taking a photo. I'm loving every minute of being in the environment. And actually, I find the camera helps me focus in on the subjects. I find I would say I'm even more so there. But yes, so I'd like to say thank you to everyone for turning out. I'll stop the share so I can see people's faces now, because that'll be nice. But thank you so much to everybody for turning up. It's been a real pleasure. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this, and I think I'll have to do it again. I've really enjoyed it. I was quite nervous before we started, I'll be honest. So
I think you're a natural, Martin.
Thank you very much.
It's really interesting. Does anybody else want to share any comments, by the way? We can stay for another few minutes just to chat if you have anything.
I've got time. I'm here on my own, so.
Someone says you don't want to see my face, haha, but this is great. This was great, Martin. Yes, a natural. Really enjoyed it.
Hey, thank you, Dave.
Oh, this is lovely. It was really interesting. It was really interesting. Beautiful imagery, obviously. You know, we all fell in love with the imagery, but also getting the stories behind it and really getting to grips. There are so many more questions, Martin. We should really be here for another 2 hours, I think.
Well,
you
I'm
know,
happy to answer a few, or I'll take this list. I will answer as many questions as I can, and I'll put it on the website, and then I'll just type them all up and put them in the blog.
I
And
think I
answer
want to
as
know
many as
whether
I
you were
can.
lying down, whether you were on the boat, you know, seeing where they photographed the pigeons on the boat. Actually, that was one of the questions. So there's loads and loads of each story.
Yeah, I mean,
Great, for sure.
yeah, I'm uncompromising when it comes to positioning myself. If I need to be lying down in the manure or in the sand or in the water, I'll be doing it. Otherwise, you can't get to the angle you require to be. And yeah, due to the kit we use, it's good to see straight through the lens. So.
Fabulous. Well, I suppose thank you all very much for coming tonight, actually. It was a pleasure to share that moment with you in these kind of complicated times. Even though Zoom is not quite the same, it does feel like a moment of connectedness. We've done this, we did this a month ago with a performance. We're doing this again next month with Bat Studio, who are sharing behind an architecture. Sorry, I might just mute Damien here. Sorry, Damien. And so you're very welcome to sort of keep on looking on our Eventbrite page and see what else we've got going on. And I'll share the link to the recording so you can share it with friends and families who might have missed it if you hear anything. And I'll also share you the survey if you haven't had a chance to share a comment about today. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful end of the week.
Thank you all again. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Martin.
Pleasure.
Right, yeah, thanks, Martin. That was really interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go on your website and take another look at them. It's been so long since we had that chat. Really.
And I'll make sure I get you the full-size images, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Once we get to do them.
Oh yeah, we're still hoping to be able to exhibit it. We just don't know at the moment what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
We'll fit that in whenever it comes round again. And as I said, we get the full-size images in there.
That'll be great. I look forward.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
I'm going to end this. Bye. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Is that Hartley?
Bye.
Bye, Hartley.